Hey, deserving listeners, 90 Day Fiancé, last resort. Let's watch.
Resort.
All the guys, they want to go to a strip club. They said you're not allowed to tell anybody, but...
Wait, they're telling you not to tell me.
Correct. I'm not going to get in trouble with you, so I'm not going.
I'm not mad at you. I think I'm more pissed off at the guys now.
Okay, so I actually thought I would watch the recap on one of the episodes because there wasn't a lot to react to, but sometimes when I watch the recap, I'm like, maybe I should say something. But what happened was Jovi and Asuelu and Kelly wanted to go to a strip club. Mainly Jovi wanted to go to a strip club. Asuelu had never been. And they were going to go without telling their partners, which is not a good idea, of course. It's hurtful. It's lying. Why? Why would you do that? Especially, well, anyway, I was going to say especially since it's being filmed. But either way, I mean, even if you get away with it, why would you lie about that sort of thing? And at least from the edit, they were asking Ed, and he said, yeah, let's go. And now he's claiming that he automatically said he wasn't going to go. Okay. Take that with what you want to. That's a weird statement. Take that as you will. And then now he is coming to Liz, and you could say that he's doing something that is pro-social. He is saying, look, I'm just trying to think what I would do in a situation like this. I mean, well, first of all, I don't know if I'd have friends that would just straight up lie to anybody just so easily. And it's so bizarre too, because why would you want to go? I mean, of course, the production might put them up to it. Anyway, so that's one thing. Kelly left. There was there's been a number of scenes with Kelly and Molly, and there was some conflict, but at least in the edit, I didn't understand why Molly was upset. I mean, she, during that Kama Sutra thing, straight up told Kelly that she was no longer in love with him. She said, I love you, but I'm no longer in love with you. And he was hurt, and so he tried to talk with her about it and it didn't work, and so he left. And Molly kept complaining about how he's not good with communication because he keeps walking off. Well, one, do you not understand how he would be hurt and walking off? That's what I want to say to her. And then the other thing is, it's like, well, what's there to talk about? You just straight up told him. I mean, to most people, at least in mainstream American culture, which I think the two of them are a part of, if you tell your partner you're no longer in love with them, then it's divorce time. It's breakup time. That's what most people would conclude. Not everyone, of course, even in my mainstream American culture. Around the world, they don't necessarily see it that way, but most people do. Most people in my circle would interpret, if they had a partner that told them, I'm no longer in love with you, they would interpret that as essentially they are telling you. You know, if someone told me they were no longer in love with me, I would interpret that as a soft way of telling me that they're breaking up with me, not that they're just experiencing some despair or dismay. Maybe they are, but meaning that they're not just telling me that and now we're going to work on it. You know, most people would consider that to be a communication that you're actually making a choice to tell me that because you want to tell me that you want to break up with me. Anyway, so Molly was blasting him for that. And I don't know. I mean, her whole thing this whole season about complaining about him, I haven't heard in the edit, I haven't heard anything from her that leads me to believe I understand what her problem is. And I strongly suspect, based on the edit, that she fell out of love with him for some reason. It could be the reasons that she says, that she's basically, in nicer words, she is saying that he lacks ambition. But that seems like an odd reason to break. I mean, if you're in love, the way that Molly, I think, was saying they were in love, so either they weren't really in love, or I don't know. It just seemed like an odd thing to break up with someone about. You know, and everyone's different. But at any rate, I suspect that she fell out of love with Kelly long before coming to this resort. And she either didn't admit it to herself or wasn't yet ready to admit it to him. Maybe she fell out of love, and then they offered her to come to this retreat, and she either thought, well, I want to go on the retreat, and if I break up with him, then I can't go on the retreat. That's pretty awful. I don't want to think that of her. Or she thought, well, maybe something will happen. Maybe at this retreat there's therapists. Maybe we'll be able to see our way through it. And she even talked about this. She was like, I was hoping the therapist would tell Kelly that, in not so many words, Molly was basically saying, I was hoping that the therapist would tell Kelly and convince him that he's the problem. And that leads to the conclusion that I think she thought that her lack of love for him was completely his fault, that he had deceived her because he wasn't as career-oriented as she thought he was, or as he had portrayed himself to be. And that could be true. And, maybe that was the spark, but I don't know. That's not a typical thing that happens. So I would, and what is love, as the story goes, it's hard to know. But anyway, at the very least, I suspect that she had been significantly out of love, or 9 toes out of the door, before they even came to the retreat, because very quickly she was not treating him as someone that wanted to be in a relationship with him. And it just took a while for Kelly to be told this. He was detecting all these things. And, he kept saying, you lie, you're lying, because I think, at least from his perspective, she was drumming up reasons to blast him. And so we saw more of that. And then they had a session, and the question was put forth as to whether or not they were done. And Molly admitted, yes, the relationship is over. The relationship has run its course. And then she said something like, all relationships have an expiration date. And, I've talked about the egg timer thing, and that is one way to look at it, and one way that I've looked at it. Like, one way, like I suspect for me and my wife that our expiration date, or our egg timer, is so long in the future, will be long dead. Like our egg timer is like 500 years or something, but our we'll be dead long before then. And so but I don't know, maybe there are relationships that would two people would be totally happy living together for the rest of their lives forever. And, I could see that being true as well. And certainly you would want to believe that to be true with your wife, especially if you plan on, if you believe in an afterlife and you're going to spend, it's like, do they allow divorce in heaven? Anyway, point is that she was saying that, and I didn't know what she meant by that. I didn't know if she meant that all relationships will end before we die, or I don't know. It's just a little side point. The other thing that I will actually highlight is that the two of them broke up in a way that was, I thought, compassionate toward each other. She, once, and this happens all the time, actually, this is something I comment on. It looked like for Molly that she was in denial of the fact that she was done with the relationship. And instead of facing that, she just blamed him and would kind of string him along, and would be kind of forced to reveal what she should have just told him a long time ago. And Kelly even said this. It's like, well, why did we come on this trip? Because I think he's a pretty perceptive guy, and I think he perceived that she probably fell out of love a long time ago and made that decision, because right from the get-go, she was not. It wasn't like they were all lovey-dovey and then something happened. It was just like in the very first minute of the first day, she was like giving him the cold shoulder, not even sitting next to him. So, he was saying that sort of thing. So I suspect that she was in denial. It looked like that. A lot of people will do that. And instead of facing it, you're just surviving minute by minute. And one of the things that you feel is frustration and repulsion to your partner, because you're done. You don't want to be with them. And it's almost like you're putting a cage around you and forcing yourself to be in a cage with someone you don't want to be with, because you don't want to be with them, but you're in denial of it. So you're staying in the relationship. You're making choices to stay in there, which Molly was doing. She was making choices to stay in the relationship. She was making choices not to face it. She was making choices not to tell him what was going on, making choices not to break up with him. And so she's just trying to survive, and all she feels is the frustration and repulsion. But she's the one that's forcing her into him. You know what I mean? She's the one that's forcing her to stay. And so But, all she feels is that frustration, so she just attacks him, when all she has to do is just open the door and walk out, and she doesn't have to deal with him anymore, So when she finally did that, then all of a sudden, the most compassionate version of Molly that I've ever seen, because I'd never seen her on any other season before, came out, and she went to him as he was leaving, and she said, I'm sorry, and I love you, and was trying to be nice. She could have said more, like, I'm sorry for stringing you along, I'm sorry for the things I said. So it wasn't fantastic, but at least it was a little bit. And he, in a very differentiated way, a lot of other people in his shoes would have blasted her back and said, like, I don't care, I'm moving on in life. He was very vulnerable. In fact, Kelly said something that was just fantastic. He said, I learned that vulnerability, I've been the most vulnerable in this relationship and on this retreat than I've ever been before. And I've learned that that's a good thing, and because I was worried, because he said a couple things that seemed to indicate that he might not, so he did say something like, I have learned with the vulnerability that I should never be that way again. But I think he gave it some time, and then in a later interview, he said, I've learned to be vulnerable and I like it, and I want to actually do that in other relationships. So, because Kelly in this season exhibited a lot of differentiation. There were some issues, but the stress and the pain and the rejection and the betrayal, betrayal might be a little strong, but, supreme rejection that was happening to him, he held it together pretty well. So he left, and Molly stayed, but then left. Anyway, and then so Ed is now telling Liz, and Liz reacted pretty well to learning about the strip club thing. She's like, I'm feeling angry, and then she's like, well, I guess I'm not angry at you because you told me. I guess I'm just angry at those other guys. So that was a lot of emotional awareness, because other people in her shoes would attack him for, I don't know, we've seen that sort of thing, like the kind of things that Darcy would attack Georgie for. It's just like, why are you attacking him? But anyway, let's watch more of the recap and see what I say. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. So I don't know about you, but throughout my day, I have two opposing forces in my mind between what I want to do, like playing a video game or playing with my dogs, and what I should do, like exercise more or eat more fiber or something. As a therapist, I talk with a lot of clients about this inner conflict. Most people think it's all about willpower, even though research demonstrates that willpower doesn't really work. There are a lot of evidence-based techniques that actually work that people don't usually consider, like using behavioral shaping techniques or healing from our relational traumas that keep us stuck internally. Well, one option worth exploring is BetterHelp. If you're thinking of starting therapy, it's worth giving a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient and suited to your schedule. And also, you can switch therapists at any time at no additional charge. So, make your brain your friend with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/Kirk today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Kirk.
Let me make this clear. So you have the offer to work.
Another thing I want to mention is that Jovi and Yara had a session with this therapist, and the therapist invited the mom, and then in that session, the mom revealed the secret of Yara. Yara had already told Jovi, but Yara had told nobody else, had not told her mother-in-law. And the therapist just blurted out, well, that's strong, but said in the session that Yara had gone on birth control secretly. And when I saw that, I was like, oof. When we therapists have conjoint sessions, meaning that we have multiple people from the same system, family, whatever, in the same therapy office at the same time, then we have to be very careful about confidentiality, we have to be very careful. We have to tell people our policy about that. There's various different policies about it, and there's various different guidelines and ethics. So I guess it's possible that the therapist, the only way that was not a problem is that the therapist would have told them in very clear terms and had them sign a disclosure statement that also had a description of this that explained to everyone, including the mom, that the therapist cannot necessarily remember everything that she heard in individual sessions or sessions where one person isn't there. And so she reserves the right to share information, secrets, if you will, because it's either hard to recall everything that was said in different configurations of sessions and or she doesn't want secrets to be around. There are very simple. I don't have a policy like that. I've been over that already, but every therapist needs to have a policy that is ethical, and there's a range there. Anyway, I doubt that she has that policy because the way she reacted, the therapist, when she realized that she had revealed something to the mom, she kind of was taken aback a little bit, and it looked like she realized that she made a mistake. Now, at the end of the day, the family didn't. They weren't upset, and there was an interview with Yara outside the session where she says, well, I didn't expect to tell my mother-in-law, Mrs. Gwen, as she calls her, about that secret, but the process is supposed to be open communication, and so it might as well be now. So as long as the effect wasn't hurtful and harmful to the clients from their perception and otherwise, then it's not a problem. But if I had a supervisee that had a moment like this, I would have a serious sit down with them about what were you thinking when you revealed that? What's your policy? How do you keep track of information that might not be a good idea to reveal to other people when they enter the session? Because you could, one of the big pitfalls or consequences negatively by doing that, what she did is Yara could hate the therapist and blow out of therapy and maybe even sue you, depending on whether or not there's some grounds for that. So that happened. The other thing that happened was that Jovi revealed his secret at the encouragement of the mom, that Jovi was offered a job closer to home, which Yara really wants so that Jovi could spend more time with her. And the way that the edit was, I suspected that there must be some explanation as to why Jovi didn't take the job closer to home, because the way they were editing it, it looked like Jovi was wanted to not be home and didn't want to be with his family and wanted maybe to cheat or something. There wasn't that strong implication, but that was kind of the vibe I was getting. But then later on, they revealed that Jovi didn't want to take the job closer to home because to him, it would be worse off for him and his family because with the job far away, he goes away for a month and then he comes back for a month. And he loves that because he has a full month of free time to just spend all day and, 7 days a week with him and his kid. With Yara and the kid. And he was worried that if he took a job closer to home and it's 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, that he would, there would be a commute and he would be tired after work and he would have the weekends, but maybe there's other things he has to do, maybe work, I don't know. So overall, in terms of hours and quality time spent, it would be a massive drop. And he was saying that he's suspected that would cause a lot of conflict between him and Yara because Yara wouldn't tolerate the fact that he was nearby and not accessible. So it sounded maybe like Jovi rationally or irrationally concluded at some point that it's actually kind of helpful that he works on the other side of the planet because I think he's pretty far away. That it helps because then she knows that he's just not accessible, and so she just settles into another routine. Whereas if he's coming home every night, then she might be texting all day or getting upset that he's not taking more time off or something. I don't know. It sounded possible but the solution is not to lie to your partner, and that's what they're doing. She lied about the birth control. He lied about the job. She's perfect, as I said before, she's perfectly in her rights to take birth control if that's what she wants to do. It's her body. She's the main person who has to make those, who has the right. She's the main person who has the right to make all those choices. Of course, compassionate people will incorporate their partner's decisions into it for sure. That's usually how it works. But at the end of the day, I keep saying that phrase, it's her body, it's her choice. She can take birth control if she wants to. But the fact that she felt she couldn't tell him is a problem, and the fact that he felt he couldn't tell her, that's a problem. And that is a pattern that even goes back to the very first season that they were on, that they tended to withhold. Jovi lied is by omission, by saying, by not telling her that he wants to go to the strip club, blah, blah, blah. There's another little bit in this session where the mom, Mrs. Gwen, was pretty angry at Yara for being on birth control. And the way she was wording it, I'm on board with, in that the mom was saying, you can't lie to Jovi about this, and she's basically telling them both they can't lie to each other, which, yeah, that makes sense. But it almost seemed like there was some kind of, I don't know, ideology or religion or something that was fueling the mom's criticism of Yara, because you just think the mom would understand that there's probably a good reason for Yara. I mean, again, it's not okay to lie, but it's not just that she lied willy-nilly. It was that Jovi is so rigid and won't accept any other answer other than we're definitely having more children. So it just makes you, because they never go into it on 90 Day Fiancé. They never go into religion or ideology or views on birth control or, there's a lot. The more and more I hear stories and study the various different ideologies, let's just say in the United States, that people right next door to me could just have this completely different point of view. Obviously, I've known that, but the proliferation of what I would call cult-like brainwashing and rigid ideas that bring us back in time in a number of ways, particularly with sexism and the role of women, that they're just basically baby making machines. With IBLP, I did all those deep dives. I did, of course, I knew those ideologies are in the United States. I didn't realize that they were so likely to be so prevalent that we would have, because we have religiosity is on the decline, but fundamentalism is on the incline. So there's more fundamentalists today of various different religions than there were 30 years ago. But there are far fewer religious people today than there were 30 years ago. So, go figure. But so I don't know. What do you think? Am I just reading into stuff? Because, verbatim, she was just saying, hey, you can't lie to Jovi about that sort of thing. But given the context, you just think Mrs. Gwen would have pulled back the reins a little bit to just be like, well, you shouldn't lie, but Jovi, how come you weren't open to conversations with your wife about what her wishes were regarding family planning?
Get closest to home, but you refuses?
Yeah.
Not like now you're going for a month and you have the chance to be near me and you choose to not be.
I do love to hear that. She wants me to be at home, but the right decision was not for me to take the job.
Another thing that the more I talk, the more I realize I should have maybe just reacted in the moment. But sometimes just to peek behind the curtain, when I'm watching and I'm like really into it, and then I find myself after like a half an hour of not having, because there's a lot of scenes on this show that just I don't have anything to say about it. And after 30 minutes of me just sitting here in this isn't the most comfortable seating position, and with the lights and everything, that eventually I just kind of relax and my brain goes into this other mindset where essentially just watching a TV show, and there are moments, and I don't take note of moments when I might react. Anyway, another thing that I will say is that with the therapist was that she was saying, and of course it's edited, very thoroughly, but the therapist was saying you have to trust each other, or you have to make a choice to trust each other. And I didn't exactly know what she meant, and again, they were editing it, but that notion is out there often, hopefully not in therapy offices, but this notion that trust is a choice. I mean, it is kind of, but trust is something that naturally occurs. It's like yelling at a seed to grow. It's a very good analogy that I might, if I don't say so myself, in that, I trust my wife. Why do I trust her? Well, because I don't think she's ever lied to me in our life. She's never cheated on me. I mean, I can never know for sure. That's always one of those existential things, or things that you just can't know for sure. But there's been zero evidence of any kind of cheating or lying, in all of our time together. So, there's a lot of other things to build trust, but why do I trust that my wife won't cheat or lie to me? Well, because she hasn't. So if there have been lying with Jovi and Yara, there's been lying or cheating in other instances, then you'd be stupid to trust. Why would you trust, why would Kalani trust Asuelu? It's not a choice. Kalani, if Kalani chose to trust, if Jovi and Yara chose to trust each other, that they're not going to lie to each other, then they're actually doing something that's kind of stupid, because they'd have to be delusional. They'd have to trick themselves into denying what actually happened. When people lie, it's not just a random choice. There's a lot of things that play into it. And also when someone lies, particularly in marriages, it's not just one choice. It's billions of choices, because at any moment in time, even if you lied once, you could immediately say, I'm sorry, I just lied. Every second of every hour of every day of every week of every month that proceeds after the lie, the individual is choosing to continue to lie. Every second they are coming to a Y in the road, and they are continuing to choose, I'm going to continue to lie. That's thousands or billions or whatever choices that the person is making to lie. It's not just one choice. Or if they lie by omission, same. There's so many instances where they can reveal the truth, and they choose not to. I mean, at the very least, you could argue that every day there's at least one moment where they are reminded of the lie by omission, and they choose to continue lying. So to experience that from a partner, and then to be asked by a therapist that, so it's my fault that I don't choose to trust this person. It's our fault that we don't choose to trust each other. Now, again, I don't know what the therapist meant. It's possible that she meant you have to trust each other enough to tell the truth. That's possible. But I just thought I'd mention that, because I hear that sentiment often of, and it's kind of a theme on the show where, and I don't know if the producers are pressuring the therapists, I don't know, but I've seen therapists operate this way, where they enter into couple therapy as the clinician with this notion that they're responsible, or it's a bias that they have that they want the couple to work things out. I learned a long ass time ago that that is not my job. My job is to help both people. If they both want to work on their relationship, then I will help them with the relationship. But, like with Molly and Kelly, I think their relationship was basically over, according to Molly's heart, prior to even entering the treatment of this resort. And so the assumption that if they came to me, the assumption that I'm supposed to somehow coerce or trick Molly or convince her or motivate her or inspire her to be with Kelly, what's it to me? If Molly doesn't want to be with Kelly, then I'm being coercive and harmful by even trying to influence her towards Kelly. Why is that my job? It's not my job. Now, if Molly tells to me, I want to be inspired, or I want to have the spark rekindled, how can we do that, then I will help her with that. But she wasn't asking for that. So my point is that not all the therapists, the guy therapist doesn't seem to be doing that, but the other therapists kind of do. And that's also a misconception that clients will have. They'll come into my office, a couple, and one person will be very much 9 toes out of the door, and they're worried about telling me about that because they think that I'm going to argue with them or something. And if I detect that, which isn't actually, it's not hard to detect when one person has 9 toes out of the door. It's pretty easy for me to hear the hallmarks of that, which would prompt me to ask questions and da-da-da. But anyway, I just thought I'd mention that.
I woke up this morning, I tried to contact Kalani. I text her if she's here, and she say having breakfast. And I say where, and she didn't tell me. I can feel something just not right.
Yeah, so to catch you up on this story, for the two of them, Suelu and Kalani, it seemed like Kalani might be done with the marriage, but hadn't fully admitted to herself or wasn't sure or something. And they were off camera, and Asuelu was going through his phone, and according to Kalani, he was looking at her as if he was doing something he shouldn't. And she came over and says, "What are you doing?" And Asuelu said, I'm deleting emails or something. And for her, to her credit, she said, well, I don't know if he was up to no good and communicating in a infidelity manner, but it's possible that he was, and I would agree, given that there's no indication that he's not going to cheat again. He has remorse, but he had remorse before anyway. So she's like, I don't know if it was infidelity based, but it could have been, and it definitely triggered me. And that's something that is very common. If you have suffered from infidelity, and even if you're not with that partner anymore, and you look over and your partner is doing something on their phone, even if they're doing it right in front of you, and you can even see their screen, for a lot of people, they'll get a jolt of trauma triggering that is related to being cheated on, even if the cheating wasn't involving the phone, because of whatever sort of associations that you might have about phones. Anyway, so she had that reaction, which is totally normal. The interesting bit here is that she decided, okay, I'm now going to unblock that guy that I got together with. And then he professed his love, and then he flew out, I think from California to Florida to see her. And then she lied to him and disappeared and was with him all night. So there's not a lot of people that would say that Kalani is in the wrong for wanting to do that. There's not a lot of people that feel bad for Asuelu in this situation, However, if I were there, I would suggest that in the future, she might want to have taken each step in the right order. That, I would have asked her, so do you want to go see this other guy? And she would say, yeah, I do. And then I would say, okay, what does that mean regarding your marriage? And I'm guessing what it meant was that she was done with the marriage, or at the very least, maybe she wanted to take a trial separation, or even a trial time where they date other people. And so if that was the case, then she could go to him, and it might only take a few minutes, and then she goes, right? So she doesn't have to leave to be with the other guy and lie to Asuelu. Again, on the scale of things, it's not this huge transgression, but it could help everyone if that is the norm. Like one benefit selfishly to Kalani that I could highlight is that if you, Kalani, stay on the high ground and avoid that kind of deceptive, lying behavior, then it gives Asuelu perhaps a little bit more incentive moving into the future, because you're going to have to, even if you do divorce him, you're going to have to deal with Asuelu for the next 25 years of your life. And for the next 10 or 15 years, you're going to have to deal with Asuelu fairly intimately because of you have kids together. And, unless Asuelu like skips town, which unfortunately I wouldn't be surprised. One of those dads that, in his heart he loves his kids, but he doesn't actually dedicate himself physically to the task of being a father. I don't know. I don't want to say that. He seems like he really loves his kids, so I'd suspect that I would hope that he would stick nearby where Kalani was living, because you just have to imagine that the custody would probably be primarily with Kalani. Who knows? Anyway, so it's possible that by doing this deception, that Asuelu in the future, even if you're not together, Asuelu might say in his head as a justification, well, she lied to me, so I can lie to her. It wouldn't be about infidelity, but it might be about taking the kids to the doctor or something, So it's not a huge thing, of course, but I am just not a fan of lying, especially when there are clear options otherwise.
Go ahead.
All right, well, that's enough out of me. Let's tune in next time when more comes out of my face when I watch the show. And everyone, please take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really do.